Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Public Interface, and we're here at day 3 of the Sitecore Symposium from sunny Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm here with Caplette, Dan Murphy, Ed Schwehm, all from Valier. And guys, Sitecore 9, the big announcement from this symposium. I mean, we've got a new CEO, Mark Frost. He's bringing with him some passion, some energy. He talked about one of the things that was really important to him was quality. So in my mind, you know, with a technical background, quality is stability of the platform, quality of the code base, and those are things that they're really focusing on. But there's also the quality of the user experience, which is how primarily the customers and the marketers interact with the platform. And so why is that important?
I was really encouraged to see a renewed focus on the authoring experience in Sitecore. They spent a lot of time, I think, in the last few years focusing on the engagement and analytics and all of these bells and whistles, but really I think a refocus on some of the tools that hadn't been as friendly as they could have been, like Sitecore Forms, but also just working within Page Editor. They've made some enhancements here that I think are going to go a long way.
The experience editor focus, I think, is a really big deal.
Yeah, there were a few changes that made it a little bit easier to get at the Sitecore tree for like non-explicit fields and things. I talked a little bit about this in my talk. Some of what I'm seeing is making it a little bit easier to make sure that you're not context switching between experience editor and content editor, and they can complete their task just in one mode.
Yeah, and I also saw that they rewrote the whole marketing automation engine, kind of from the ground up. It sounds like not only like a UI change, but they rewrote, the entire piece. So I think, and it goes back to the quality issues. They probably heard a lot of feedback from customers that it was there were some challenges with it, and they totally brought it down to bare metal and brought it back up.
Yeah, it's encouraging to see that they are soliciting the feedback, they are listening to the customers, they are listening to the partners, and they're making a good faith effort to try to implement these usability and quality enhancements to the platform, and I think that's really encouraging. So Ed, you are probably amongst the panel here the most technical guy, most in the weeds when it comes to the implementation, writing code, building things with Sitecore. What did you see here at the symposium that really got you excited?
So if I had to pick one thing, it would definitely be JSS and Headless. The presentations that Nick and Alex and Adam gave were just blew me away in terms of how cool it's going to be. Really, the idea just that you can completely decouple your back end, the content management, from how you're presenting it in the delivery. You can use whatever React tools you want to make it work, and you can put it on anything that'll run Node, and it'll work. So
help me out. What is Headless? What does that mean? Why should I be excited about it?
So Headless means that there's no server-side rendering for the most part when we're doing the content delivery. Everything's done with React. Everything's done in the JavaScript. It's all done, and that means that you can do it on any server you want. It also means that you don't have to write C# for everything. You can have all of your renderings done in JavaScript.
Yeah. And I think the really interesting thing here is that for very large clients, so today they have to, if they have 6 or 7 content delivery servers and they're serving 400 sites, 500 sites, they can get a lot of scale out of this. So they can actually pare back the number of delivery servers they have, and they push that rendering, just out to, the browsers. He was showing examples of just running on like Heroku.
Yeah.
And so you can actually, you could push that out to dozens of instances for far less cost, and you actually get faster performance globally with a reduced number of infrastructure.
Yeah.
So I think this is another example of them understanding the needs of their enterprise customers, and trying just to really stay ahead of up with the market.
So you mentioned the enterprise, the focus on the enterprise. One of the things that we hear a lot from our clients that they're curious about is cloud, right? They ask us about moving to the cloud. Should we go to the cloud? How do I know when to go to the cloud? Is Sitecore on the cloud? Are we ready to go to the cloud? Lots of stuff about cloud. What is Sitecore doing in that space? They're spending a lot of investment and developer energy on it. What strides have they made?
So last year they launched really with a kind of a rethought PaaS model. They sort of, when actually, let's go way back. Sitecore, when Azure came out, they were there. They had Azure support. The year that Azure launched, and they were so early that they had to write a lot of their own tools to do things like deployments. And the technology on Azure has, had evolved. And last year there was a big launch of a lot of new services around Sitecore that allowed you to take advantage of those native Azure capabilities. So that was really exciting. And I think this year the theme has really been about just increasing the investment there. So I heard a lot about deployments and making flexible deployments, so that you can get an entire Sitecore environment set up in 30 minutes. And just being integrated with all of the native Azure tools. And I think that's great. Again, it's just listening to, I think, the current pain points for customers. They loved what Azure offers from a scaling perspective, from an availability perspective, but deployments were tough. And so they heard that. They went back to the drawing board on that, and I think now we're seeing a lot of new tools launch.
And one of the other big exciting announcements was Cortex. Now, we got the technical preview of Sitecore 9. Cortex was not included, so this kind of took me by surprise. I knew Sitecore was looking into machine learning, but now they've sort of put a brand on it, and they had a hypothetical case study to sort of try to hype it up. What are your thoughts on that?
We don't quite know what Cortex is going to be yet. I think we're really looking for more information on it. I think everybody's hungry to learn about it. But what we do know is it's machine learning, and I think the idea here is that it can take all of the data that's stored in XDB and provide you insight about your customers and how your content's performing. So that seems to be the theme of what they're developing.
It's not even going to have to provide us a marketer's insight to do things. It's going to do it for us in many cases. At least the example they laid out, right, where the user will come to the site. It will already know users like this and user using data from all different sources. They showed MLS as one of the sources, which is really cool, reaching entirely a different place. Using that to get information and then automatically serving the content that the machine thinks is going to work because it has worked with other people of that type. And that's awesome. And a little scary, but awesome.
So you say it's a little scary. The case study they showed had a woman who the machine, Cortex, was able to figure out she'd just purchased a house. Using the MLS data, was able to figure out what the floor plan of her house was and recommend to her a home theater system that would maximize the acoustics of her floor plan. Really cool, also feels a little bit invasive. I mean, is that something that, are we taking it too far?
Potentially, but I think the promise of this is that, one of the impediments that a lot of our clients have is that they just don't know where to begin with personalization. I mean, if they had this engine, if this brain is going to be strong enough to be able to kind of handle some of that personalization on rails, I think that's an avenue worth pursuing.
I mean, there's already so much of our personal information out there on the internet right now. I mean, Amazon's the classic example. You go to Amazon and they know you probably better than you know yourself. They're recommending you things that you didn't even know you wanted. And when you see it, you're like, oh yeah, of course I want that. Thanks, Amazon, for making that recommendation. And it doesn't feel invasive. I almost feel grateful that it made the recommendation to me. So maybe a little bit of the trepidation is unfounded, and that was the point of one of the keynotes, actually.
I think the difference is going to be whether it's based on like implicit behavior or explicit. I mean, you've told Amazon quite a bit about you, so it can make some good decisions about what you might want, and I think that's going to really depend on your implementation and what data is driving those decisions.
So we talked about the cloud. We talked about quality. One of the other big features of Sitecore 9 is XConnect, which is, to my understanding, a service layer that sits between the XDB and whatever other clients you want to connect to Sitecore. Allows you to push data into XDB in a secure fashion, and allows you to pull it out in a secure fashion. So this is a pretty big deal. So what can we do with this?
Again, that's just another example of Sitecore really understanding where the market's going, especially for enterprise clients who aren't going to use Sitecore for all of their marketing needs. Right. They have best-of-breed tools, and I think Sitecore's realizing that they need to open up their ecosystem to allow that data from those tools to come into Sitecore so that it can be used to provide a contextual experience.
Let's not even forget going back to the quality aspect. It looks like using XConnect, even just within the Sitecore ecosystem, is going to be so much easier than it is now. I'm working with a client right now that has that we're using XConnect. No, it's not XConnect. We're using XDB in a custom way for them, and using what I've seen with XConnect would just make this 100 times easier and simpler for us to make those connections.
And it seems like this is custom each and every time for us to kind of pull in data and synthesize it or try and get some of that Sitecore analytics out of there. I'm hoping that this means that we get to market faster on integrating these things, because a lot of our clients have some entrenched marketing technologies that they're using, and it's a big ask for them to kind of have them drop that and use this, at least right from the get-go. I mean, maybe that's the end game, that things could be all in Sitecore, but I think this will make it easier, I think, in the interim.
I mean, my read on it is kind of what you said, Corey, that they're recognizing that people have already sort of identified the platforms and technologies that they're using, and it's a big ask to ask them to move away from it and get onto Sitecore when they have a proven track record of success with whatever they're currently using. So this opens the door for them to really sort of integrate what they already have with the Sitecore Experience platform and take advantage of that data, and it standardizes it. That's one of the big things Sitecore has been pushing, is trying to standardize approaches to things so that every implementation isn't a special snowflake.
It seems like they're launching with two really great plugins. So one for Microsoft Dynamics and one for Salesforce, which we see constantly. The need for CRM integration, and those are the two.
Yeah, there's a great example I saw in one of the talks I went to where they had a bicycle company, right, where you rent a bicycle, you bike around Copenhagen, and the bicycle was Wi-Fi enabled, and these really exist. Wi-Fi enabled bicycles, they connect to open Wi-Fis around the city and push data up to the server. So it sort of tracks where you're going on your bike, and a lot of metrics about your pedal speed, how much you weigh, the hot spots you go to. So once the client returned the bike and they checked out on their app, they had an integration with XConnect to push all of their bicycle metrics into the XDB, and then they could act upon it on their website, and they could build a profile for that user. And not only could you build a user experience and show them, this is what you did, this is where you stopped, this is how many kilometers you rode to make you feel good about how much exercise you got in, but they could also figure out the type of person they're dealing with. Is this somebody who likes an urban area, somebody who likes to go out into the forest, for example? And they can personalize their experience based on that. And it was really exciting, and I think they're going to open a lot of creative opportunities for people.
Match that with Cortex then, being able to take that patterns and see what happens, have Cortex automatically do the learning, comparing that, and figure out whatever sort of interactions that they're looking for, whatever goals the client might be looking for.
I wonder if they're going to have a data science MVP soon, because it's pulling all this data in is the first step, and then we'll have things. It sounds like Cortex to help us with the analysis.
It's a whole separate discipline, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when we first started getting into implementing Sitecore, it was just C#, ASP.NET. It's expanded so much now, and it's really exciting, and I think just the scope and breadth of this conference is showing how big this product is getting, and it's really exciting to be a part of it. All right, I want to thank you all for coming here and chatting with me about the Sitecore Symposium. I'm excited about the next year, getting started with Sitecore 9. I hope sounds like you all are too.
Absolutely.
So until the next episode of Public Interface, thanks for joining us. I'm Chris, and we'll see you next time.